In the light heavyweight class, Jon Jones holds numerous UFC records. He was an undisputed pound-for-pound boxer of the highest order. For more information on the fighters who are really scared of Jones, keep watching this video for all the interesting details. Let's begin. First up, Alexander Gustafsson. Alexander Gustafsson went up against Jon Jones in UFC 165. Gustafsson was the first guy of equal stature to Jones, but that didn't stop critics from pointing out a major flaw in the comparison. Jones was still a much longer fighter than Gustafsson, a fact that would have been a major issue prior to the fight. Gustafsson, on the other hand, managed to counteract Jones's reach and made this probably the best light heavyweight championship match in the sport's history, ushering in what many of us hope will be Jones's only meaningful rivalry. Next we have Daniel Cormier. UFC 182 was all about Jones vs Cormier. Many believed Daniel Cormier had what it took to dethrone the champion. Whether they were certain the challenger's wrestling credentials would be enough to capitalize on the opportunity, or they just wanted to be first in line for the "I told you so" soothsayers, many people predicted Jones's title run would end here. They were sorely mistaken. Jones didn't fight Shogun, Rampage, or Evans from the outside. He stepped in and gave fans the dogfight they wanted to see, giving Cormier a fighting chance against his rival. But as it turns out, reducing the gap on Jones isn't enough to stop him from becoming the GOAT, not even close. In the end, Jones and Cormier's dancing partnership is likely to continue. And then there is Rashad Evans. Jones went against Rashad Evans in UFC 145. It was fantastic to see Jones demolish any and all competitors on their final trip before the summit. But there was something missing from the champion's resume. Frazier was Ali's opponent, Bird was possessed by magic, Silva was up against Sonnen. Fans needed to see the championship face up against a rival. It didn't matter if the rivalry was friendly or hostile. We needed to observe a difference in his demeanor, and after approximately a year of wearing the belt firmly around his waist, it finally happened. Jones was matched against Evans. Although it wasn't the type of back and forth action most of us were looking for, witnessing Jones keep his cool in the face of a barrage of terrible blood was enough to justify the anticipation surrounding the bout. Now what about Vitor Belfort? UFC 152 featured Jones vs Belfort. This was again another fight against a smaller, natural middleweight who stood up when no one else would, although it was unusual for a variety of reasons. For starters, it lasted much longer than Sonnen's attempt, and secondly, Vitor Belfort managed to put Jones in a position we hadn't seen him in before. Danger. We saw the champion lose his unbreakable aura of invincibility for almost 15 seconds. He was in discomfort. He was a person, but Jones, unlike the majority of the rest of us, did not tap within 6 seconds of Belfort's armbar. With a bum arm, he pushed his way through the armbar resistance before dominating the rest of the fight. Up next, Maurício Rua. The Shogun vs Jones fight in question occurred way back in UFC 128. This match was, in many ways, the beginning of it all. Jones had previously proven his dominance against light heavyweights with victories over Ryan Bader and Stefan Bonner, but fans were curious to see how he would perform against the division's greatest fighter. It was only a matter of minutes before they had a solid answer. He was fantastic. Without a doubt, fantastic. Now we have Lyoto Machida. UFC 140 highlighted Jones vs Machida. The enigma of Lyoto Machida may have already been solved, but that didn't stop a handful of us from believing that the Dragon possessed the skills to sneak inside the champion's guard and put his chin to the test. Machida was the man in that regard, landing a good counter strike that drove the champion backwards inside the octagon. Jones wasn't in grave danger, but it was fascinating to watch him get clipped and bounce back. Jon quickly grabbed control of the bout following the brief barrage, leaving Machida to join the unconscious heap of former champions. Up next, Glover Teixeira. UFC 172 featured Jones vs Teixeira. Glover Teixeira was the man built to stop the unstoppable, according to some. He was prepared to stop Jones's takedown attempt, bite down on his mouthpiece, and charge forward with some of the division's heaviest fists. But like Jackson and every other opponent Jones had faced, he wasn't really ready. According to ESPN.com, he got hit more than twice as much as he hit Jones, which is 158 to Teixeira's 65. Overall, it wasn't a pleasant experience to be standing across the cage from Jones. Now we have Quinton Jackson. During the UFC 135 Jones vs Rampage, Jones appeared to be the ideal fighter, coming off one of the most dominant performances by a challenger in a title bout. But given Jones's past 14 opponents, fans weren't sure how the young champion would handle being hit in the face by a power puncher at the time. We weren't even sure when Quinton "Rampage" Jackson entered the ring, but thanks to Jones' tactical prowess, Rampage only managed to land 24 strikes in just over 3 rounds against the youthful phenomenon. Jones had one of his easier performances as champion, demonstrating that he represented the new generation of fighters in a class dominated by veteran lions. And then Chael Sonnen. Jones faced off against Chael Sonnen during UFC 159. He dominated a seasoned wrestler at his own game. However, since Sonnen was a real middleweight who merely talked his way into a title battle to satiate his passion for UFC gold, it didn't help him or the UFC. It wasn't even a fight that we required. Even before the two stepped into the octagon, most of us were already sure that Jones was by far the superior fighter. This bout serves as a harsh reminder that Jones is one of the hardest competitors in the sport's history. He finished his opponent with only 9 toes. Now we have Dominic Reyes. UFC 247 set the stage for Jones vs. Reyes. On a Saturday night in Houston, UFC Light Heavyweight Champion Jon Jones defeated Dominic Reyes to become the UFC's all-time championship fight winner. The pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the world arguably faced the greatest test of his career. Jones, 32, of Rochester, New York, and Reyes, 30, of Hesperia, California, engaged in a 5-round brawl at UFC 247. Many of the 17,401 fans in attendance at the Toyota Center wondered if they had just witnessed Jones' unmatched streak of divisional domination come to an end. Jones, however, won all 3 judges' decisions. Following the battle, a vociferous group of fans and media speculated that Reyes had been robbed. At the post-fight news conference, even UFC President Dana White claimed he scored the fight 3 rounds to 2 for Reyes. Up next, Thiago Santos. Jones went against Thiago Santos during UFC 239. Despite the continual tension and threat of Santos' strong attacks, Jon Jones won. Although the UFC Light Heavyweight Champion only managed it by a hair's breadth. With an obvious injury to Santos' left leg, Jones clung on for a split decision to defend his 205-pound title in the main event of UFC 239 inside the T-Mobile Arena, despite refusing to try a single takedown. Jones received a 48-47 score from 2 judges, while Santos received the same score from the third. Jones was also favored 48-47 by CBS Sports. Next on our list is Anthony Smith. At UFC 235 on a Saturday night, Jon Jones successfully defended his light heavyweight championship title against Anthony Smith by unanimous decision, despite a 2-point loss for an illegal knee to Smith's head in the 4th round. Jones, 24-1, cruised past Smith, 31-14, in a masterful display of all-around brilliance. Smith had no answers for the pound-for-pound champion of mixed martial arts. Jon dominated on his feet, against the cage, and on the ground until the 4th round, when his knee impacted Smith in the head while the challenger had fallen. Jones was docked 2 points by referee Herb Dean, who later apologized to Smith. Now, Brandon Vera. It all comes down to UFC Live, Vera vs. Jones. This was an exciting light heavyweight match between 2 competitors who have a tendency for the extraordinary in their combat. Jon Jones had developed a distinctive fighting style that involved unplanned blows into his fights, while Vera's strong Muay Thai had the ability to overpower opponents. The primary UFC Live event of the evening included a light heavyweight fight between rising star Jon Bones Jones and Brandon "The Truth" Vera, who fought in a fast-growing division. Jones had not yet faced a boxer of Vera's caliber, and therefore the outcome of this fight was a significant indicator of how far Jones would progress in his professional career. For Vera, this fight might very well have been the turning point in his UFC career. Brandon, who was once regarded as a promising heavyweight prospect, had struggled to find his footing as a light heavyweight and was in desperate need of a convincing victory to remain relevant in the constantly changing MMA market. Alas, the odds weren't in his favor. That's a wrap for this video. Are you also a fan of Jon Jones' victories? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.